Welcome to Live from My Drum Room and a special episode of Track Talk with Shawn Pelton. Shawn is known for his 33-year gig as the drummer for Saturday Night Live, but he's been one of the busiest and most prolific session drummers for over 30 years. Today, we'll do a deep dive into some of Shawn's iconic recordings and we'll barely scratch the surface of his incredible body of work. Shawn was a guest on episode 58 of Live from My Drum Room on November 8th, 2021. So be sure to check out that episode. And a little later, we'll be joined by my longtime friend, Robin Flans. And Robin is the Director of Collaborations and Outreach, Future Youth Records. And she has a very exciting announcement to make. But for now, I'd like to please welcome my old friend and fabulous drummer and human being, the great Shawn Pelton.
Oh, wow, John, man, so good to see you.
It's
And
so
thanks so
good to
much
see
for
you.
having me, man. Thank you.
My pleasure, man. We got lots of folks watching at home, and not surprisingly, and it's so great to have you back here, Shawn. Thank you.
No, thrilled to be here, man.
Yeah, I was going to say the last time we did something, it was I was looking at the date. It was November of 2021, so like coming up on 3.5, almost 4 years ago. And at that time, I don't think we really got into any of the recordings. We might have touched on some stuff, but today I'm excited. We're going to do a track talk and really get into a bunch of like really great records and recordings you've done. So
Yeah,
I'm
look forward to it.
me too, me too. I was thinking too. We can't not congratulate you for your gig on Saturday Night Live. The show's celebrating 50 years this year. You've been there for 33 of those 50 years.
Yeah, man, it's such a blessing, and I just feel so fortunate and lucky. Wow, just to have any kind of steady gig and a gig that lasts that long with the longevity, and you know, I feel extremely fortunate.
Yeah, well, you're a humble man. I mean, you obviously, I mean, you get the job done. With that goes without saying. But it's a pleasure to watch you every week on that show, and just you're just so great. I remember having Mickey Curry. When we did a tribute to Charlie Watts, and you and Mickey Curry and a bunch of the guys were on the show with me, and I remember Mickey taking a moment out of it to just go, "Hey, Shawn, I just got to say, man, you sound so great on the show," and that's what I think too. You just get it done, man. Really.
Yeah, no, that means a lot. I just saw Mickey last week. There was a thing here at the cutting room, a benefit for the Raven Foundation, which is Rick Allen's foundation for first responders.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, man. Purdy was the main
Yeah.
there, and so to get to play with Mickey and Purdy and
Oh my
Court
God.
Lang was there. Anyway, it was really a great night, and I'm such a fan of Mickey's feel and his playing, and I remember early on working with the producer T-Bone Walk, who was very close with Mickey, and him
Yeah.
saying that he loved tracking with Mickey and how there was so much space around what he laid down that to hear the other parts fit in it and stuff like that. And I just remember thinking that was so insightful at the time, the idea of space for other things to happen around what you're laying down, and having an ear for that. And when sometimes less is more,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really fascinating.
That you remind me of that approach that Mickey takes to when he play. I mean, you do leave all this beautiful space in there where it just like it breathes. You know what I mean? Like the music just breathes. Your groove. Listening to these tracks that I've been listening to for the last week or so, and really getting in deep inside, and it's just everything just kind of it's organic and it breathes.
Yeah, it's interesting with sense of space, and then uh, you know like ghost notes and how much space you take up in like a good way, and is there a space for that in the track, or it gets in the way of the rhythm guitar, or it's awesome that the drums are taking up some of that. It's like it's
Yeah.
interesting, that whole balance, and having an instinct for when it might work or not work, and being open to all of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obvious that's one of the things I have to think that you've been doing this so long. I mean, I said in the intro that, people think of you as the drummer on SNL, 33 years having that gig, but you've been a busy session guy for as long as that or longer, over 30 years.
Yeah.
You've been a working session drummer and making records and those kind. I guess what I'm getting at is like that comes instinctually to you now, to leave the space, to do the things that you do. That's maybe something that a young drummer just starting out might not ever really think about. They might think, well, there's an open space right here. I'm going to play something and fill it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you have that ability to just go, nope, man, this is where I just got to leave it open.
Right. Yeah. And then, sometimes that's what the fascinating thing about all of this is that it really could be discussed from every angle. And then sometimes more is more in a good way,
Yeah. Yep.
and that you need to be able to step up and go crazy or fill up a lot of space when it's needed. It's interesting. Like flexibility seems to be like an overriding thing I find, being able to adapt to what's being thrown at you in the situation you're in,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just one final note on SNL. I did some quick math, and when you guys celebrate the 100th anniversary, you'll have been on the show for 87 years. Had the gig for 87 years. So that's something to look forward to, man.
Yeah. All right. I like that. Well, now
Yeah.
the robots coming and stuff,
Yeah. Well, let's jump in. We got so many great tracks to play. I thought we'd start it with the Brecker Brothers tune, Evocations from 1994, I think this was.
Yeah.
And we'll backtrack 1 second. You moved to New York in the late 80s?
Yeah, late 80s, sort of, I guess, close to 89, late 88. And, was had gone to school in Bloomington, Indiana. And, Kenny Aronoff was a huge influence from back then. And ended up getting a gig with an artist that had been recording there in Bloomington at John Mellencamp's studio.
Yeah.
This guy, John Eddie, he was on Columbia at the time. And so I felt really fortunate that I was able to move out to the East Coast, with the gig. And so, man, that deal sort of fell apart. We got dropped and then got picked up on Elektra, and then that record never came out. And all of that was really interesting, like, water in the face about the reality of the music business and being in a band and all that. And so I started freelancing. And then, man, if this is 94, this would have been sort of an early session when I started working. And, it was just a trip because it went on. The record got a Grammy, I think, for a jazz, the jazz category in that year. And
yeah.
So it's a thrill to just be a part of on this track, on the record,
I mean, the Brecker Brothers. Yeah. I mean, that's just like, that's a dream that's a dream gig for anybody to have. And that's just one of many of these things that you've done that we're going to talk about today. So yeah, let's pick it up. Here we go. And Evocations. Yeah. Man, there's just such a mood that you create on that song, you know? It's I
Yeah. Well, it's just such an interesting track, hearing it back. I learned so much from this experience. It was one of the first things. And I, what's fascinating about it is that, one of my heroes, it was actually on this track. And then the producers were sort of frustrated because, um, his approach, he heard it as like sort of a snare drum, like this thing that had a constant kind of snare drum thing through it, which could really is a cool approach for a part. And the producers were sort of a dog with a bone about wanting it to have space and sort of things for all this other stuff to happen. Like, it's trippy. Like, there's a tabla thing happening and some percussive elements going on that is always really interesting when you have to come in and lay with parts that are loops and percussive parts that are
yeah.
programmed. And even like the tom thing, that there's 3 tom pitches, and I'm playing like a low tom, but part of the program thing was this sort of high and mid tom thing happening, and then this tabla thing, and there was some tambourine things. And the drums were like one of the last things to go on because they'd been trying to get this track the way they wanted it. And so it was really interesting about seeing someone that I looked up to and it not working out. And I think because the drummer had such conviction about what he thought it should be, and then sort of, wasn't willing to maybe let go of that. And this brings up such an interesting thing about when you're working on records, like this idea of having conviction about what you're hearing and want to do, but then also being open to what the artist wants or the producer wants to hear, and always giving that a shot and stuff. I remember there's a famous story of maybe it was Springsteen, but somebody told me this, that he said, I hate somebody with a good idea, it was just, and the idea, the point was that I was thought, wow, well, what does that mean? It was more like this idea of, can I please try to get this down the way I'm hearing it as the artist or the songwriter without, all this input right away,
Yeah.
And then there's other times, man, when people, you get hired and people maybe don't have a clue where they want, and they really treasure the idea that maybe you have 6 different approaches or ideas or something to bring to a track. Like I remember working with Shakira, and it was the complete opposite of that. It was like she had done demos, and you really had to transcribe what she had done and give it to her. And that's really what the gig was. And then once that happened, she was open to input and stuff, but it would do no good to bring up what you were thinking before she heard her thing expressed. And like I said, so it leans into that thing we were talking about with flexibility. Like, it's just so fascinating how, sometimes you get hired because they really want your input, and other times they kind of want a human drum machine to just do,
Yeah.
that can be fine too. There's an art to, doing all that. So this track was fascinating. I like what you're saying about trying, casting a mood. Like, it's kind of subtle, but I have a sizzle cymbal going on, the snare drum approach with like the buzzes and the drags, and the
Yeah.
tempo, and trying to have that all. It was tricky making all this lay in with how specific some of the programmed elements were.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that really leans into this idea of, like, in the 80s, I was working a lot, and I feel grateful for that time of, 4 or 5 nights a week with a band that did play along with like some sequencers and things like that. So like that developed an ability to sort of be able to, lay in there with that. Because there's an art to playing with tracks and making it feel organic and good, and not, like, why isn't this thing following me?
Yeah, no, and exactly. And I'm glad you said that, because you do. I mean, I knew there were loops in there. I mean, it's obvious you can hear some things going on in there, and it sounds, again, really organic. And you've created this, like, best way I could describe it, as I said, is like this kind of moodiness and like this lopey feel that you know, in other situations that could sound a little too staccato with a machine, you know, it could sound a little too rigid, but
Yeah,
it never feels that way, man. It just rolls along and grooves.
yeah. But it was a real learning lesson about, oh wow, here's one of my heroes, and why didn't this work out? And learning from that, and the ability to, you know, have conviction about what you want to say, but then also being able to let go and take direction, and that give and take, and so that was a real learning thing from that standpoint. The
Yeah,
experience
yeah.
there.
That's great, man. That's great. I'm going to move on to another track. This is a John Tropez tune called Chilliwaw Man,
Yeah.
and another really, really great feeling track. And let's play a little bit of this. Yeah, man. Sean, who was the bass player on that track?
I think it's Neil Jason. I think I'd
Oh,
have to go back and look to make sure, but I think
okay.
it's Neil Jason. And man, I'm proud of that one. It was actually cut here in this room on this drum kit a while back, and I love the sound. How the we're talking about ghost notes and stuff, but that stuff is really kind of in your face in a cool way to my ears. I love the kind of the motion it makes happen, and then the casting of the sound of the track, like the crash cymbal isn't a traditional crash cymbal. It's one of those big kind of bent china type cymbal things,
Yeah, yeah.
low pitch, and I always try to put a lot of thought into that if I can. Just the sonic stance of a track, and what I'm trying to create in that way.
Do you remember what the snare drum was that you used on that track?
Yeah, I think it was a Black Beauty.
Okay, yeah,
And
yeah.
the other thing that's interesting about that is that the sound is going through. It's like a 57 that just goes through this Roland box that has some different patches in it. And it's something with some severe compression and an EQ and a little bit of distortion or something. And I think that was part of that drum sound that's coming across, but that was mixed in there quite a bit. And that was an interesting thing about working, like once the hip hop thing really took off. Like there were times where showing up and just getting a good classic sound on the drums could sometimes be boring because people were used to hearing sort of the grit and the thing of the loop thing that was happening in the hip hop thing and all that. And so I remember I used to carry around this box that I could just throw a 57 on it, and it would automatically sort of do that kind of gritty, lo-fi
Yeah.
compression thing. Then I think I remember hearing like Keltner used to do that with maybe one of those Sony Walkmans, and it would be set on record, but then they'd take an output of it, But it was a
Yes.
similar idea of the way the compression interacts in the room with the drums, and all of a sudden some of that subtle stuff is brought more in your face, And anyway, so I like the way that lays in there. I like that. I think the B section, I went to the rims and stuff and played, and this idea of hearing a tune and trying to come up with a part in an approach that sets it up, and when to unleash different colors of the drum kit, and You
Yeah.
know, is it ever going to go to the ride cymbal, or the ride cymbal is going to wash everything out, especially if you're using something that has a lot of compression in the room. You know, like back when I think Jerry did that recording, Jerry Murata did recording with Gabriel. Maybe they took all the cymbals off, you know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that you get that room sound, and then maybe do the cymbals later. But the art of trying to construct a sonic stance, you know, the tune, I think there's really something to that. You know?
Yeah. Again, it's these are the things that I think are so important for people to understand what goes into constructing a track like that. And those drags, again, those drags that you're
Yeah.
playing in those spots. I mean, it again, just more breathing to me. You know, I just hear the track breathing so freely with that, you know. It's
Yeah, all that buzz roll stuff. I'm a real fan of that. You know, like I used to love Billy Higgins. You know, and when
yeah.
he had a lot of that, and then, you know, I got to hang out at Levon's for some time, and that was super inspiring. Like his approach with that, and the sound he got, and the in between stuff, and the drags, and all that language. I've always thought it always appealed to me. I just loved it. You know.
Yeah. And so, and if I can just ask, so on that particular track, you had the freedom to really kind of create your own drum part. I mean, there wasn't someone kind of saying, I wanted to sound like this or go this way. You
Yeah,
just were.
they sent it to me, and I got to do my own thing, and you know, I think they liked what they heard, which was great. And you know, John Tropez is such a, you know, he's such a legend with
Yeah.
his background in town. And I know, like Rick, you know, huge Rick Moran fan, and Steve, they used to play in John Tropez's band together.
Sure.
You know,
Yep.
and so to even be asked to get to record with John and all that was, it was just thrilling. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, speaking of legends, I have to play this next song by, I mean, a true living legend. It's Bob Dylan's "I Can't Get You Off My Mind," and we'll play a little bit of this, and there's got to be a great story behind it. So
Yeah.
let's give a listen to this. Again, this is Shawn Pelton, Bob Dylan, "I Can't Get You Off My Mind."
You off of my mind. When I try, I'm just wasting my time. Lord, I tried and I tried all night long. I cried, but I can't get you off of my mind. Didn't think you would leave me behind, but I guess you're the two-timing kind. Jump from heart to heart when I can't get you off of my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was a lot of fun that day. It was cut at Clinton Studios, which I think was over in the 40s on 9th Ave, and is no longer there. Clinton Studio A.
Yeah.
And Tony Garnier, who's Bob's bass player and musical director.
Sure. Yeah, I know Tony.
Yeah, great guy. We just had a birthday party. There was a
cool.
count for him Sunday, and we were all in a band together called Mojo Mancini, which had like John Leventhal was in it too, great producer from the Sean Coleman stuff, and Roseanne Cash, and the keyboard player guy Brian Mitchell, who was in Levon's band forever, and he's playing the accordion and stuff. And well, I remember what was interesting is Tony said, "Hey man, we got this thing, Bob, why don't you come in and play? But don't bring in a lot of stuff, because that will make Bob nervous." Remember in that era, it was sort of like, you know, you had to show, if you had a session, and then there's cartage guys back then that would bring your stuff in, and you know, if people wanted options, and all of a sudden they didn't like snare drum one, did you have, you know, things back there that you could pull out and use, you know? And he said, "Yeah, don't bring a lot of stuff," you know. And so I remember I brought in a Gretsch kit. I grew up playing Gretsch, grew up the Gretsch thing, and had a kit that I had bought used here in New York. Used a Gretsch kit. That's a Gretsch wooden snare, I remember. And then I think it's a brush in one hand and then a cross stick, and then when the fills had to happen, it couldn't be, it could be two hands, but it would be a brush and a stick, all that kind of like trippy stuff. And I remember when it was done, Bob said something like, "Man, drums worked out great. Sounds great, John." Or, and I was just, oh man, so happy to be there. But the other thing that was interesting is that we were all in a circle. Bob was facing us. There were no headphones, so no clicks, no nothing. Very organic approach. And we did another track that day. This song called "Return to Me," and it's this like sort of a Dean Martin Italian Riviera song that they used for The Sopranos. But Bob singing it was really cool, like "Return to Me," and it was like this slow brush thing. But where I'm headed is that Bob, this session, I'll never forget. It just felt like risks were being taken because of the way Bob approached things. Like on this "Return to Me" track, there was like we held this chord, and then he was going to bring us all back in with a vocal pickup, but he never did it twice the same way at all. Or body language tried to throw us a bone. It was always just, "Oh shit, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen?" You really had to and, maybe he was doing that sort of purposely. I think he likes that
spontaneity.
idea. Yeah. And but man, what a thrill to just be in the studio.
Man. Well, you answered the main question I had was he actually, which wouldn't have surprised me if you said, he came in later and did his vocals. It was just me in the band. But the fact that he was there, so the whole band pretty much cut it live, more or less.
Yeah, live on the floor.
Yeah, man. Oh my God, that's just like, again, you could just have done that and be like, okay, that's all I need to do.
Yeah, that record, that Hank Williams thing, I guess that went on to win like a Grammy that year or something with all the different, Keith Richards is on it and all these different people.
Yeah. How many do you know offhand, Shawn, how many records you've played on that have won Grammys? I meant to sort of ask you that or look that up and have that ready to go, but
no, I don't. I know, the association with John Leventhal, like that Sean Colvin stuff, that was record and song of the year that one year.
Yes.
And, he's gone on to win some with, I played on some with Roseanne Cash and then Sarah Jarosz and William Bell, the Americana category and stuff like that. So, man, just lucky to be there.
Yeah, man, I know. Well, I'm going to back up just for 10 seconds. When you mentioned moving to New York in 88, 89, playing with John Eddie, I don't know if you remember, that's when I met you. You were on tour with Jefferson Airplane. Or were you just visiting Kenny? Were you just...
Yeah, no, I think we were out maybe opening up for the Kinks.
Okay,
maybe
well,
something like that, kind of like an thing. And then through Kenny, that's how, we met.
Yeah. I remember seeing Kenny with Jefferson Airplane the summer of 89, and he introduced me to his friend Shawn Pelton.
Right.
And you were just this like really cool guy, just as, like, "Hey man, it's great to meet you. I'd love to do something." And anyway, it's just, I remember that, like my early days of Zildjian, 1989, and here you are now, just.
Yeah, that was just fresh off the turnip truck.
Me too. You and me both. Oh man, I'd love to hit the reset button and, at least for a few things, but
yeah.
It's all worked out well. So, all right. Well, man, we got so much music to play. So I'm going to move on to, again, another pretty well-known artist you've worked with. And this is none other than Bruce Springsteen. And this is a song called "Seven Angels" that I believe it's a studio outtake from. Yeah. What record did this come from, Shawn?
It was the first version of this compilation that he's calling Tracks, and it was a 4 CD set, and it was going back through the archives, I think. And there were 2 tracks that I got to play on. This one is from that era of, I think, the Philadelphia era, where he was messing around with some drum machines and stuff like that. And then these were some songs that drum machines were on that he wanted to replace with real drums at this point. And so, yeah, that's what this is.
All right. 7 Angels. Here it comes. Great tune.
Yeah.
Man.
No, I'm a huge Bruce fan, and man, such a fan of his spirit and his heart. Man, hearing him sing in that slot, I just love it. This was an interesting one where everything was already done, and this was the last thing that went on. They were trying to put little drums on it, and I'm a fan of like the drum fill language sometimes where, and I don't know if I heard Steve Cropper talking about this about Booker T, and the MGs with Al Jackson them, but like this idea that the drum fills can almost be tapped with one hand while you're driving the car, and like sort of book in that way sometimes, and at the end of the phrase, dot, 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 that kind of stuff, knocking on the door, and just the attitude of it. And it's so interesting, with this kind of language, and some of the stuff that as drummers we learn within the first 6 months of playing, like I think the first song I learned to play to was Paperback Writer, with the Beatles, and like, the language is kind of straight ahead, but then it's interesting with drumming, like you can sense drummers that have crossed this bridge over about being cool with playing simply, or like being in love with it and understanding the art of it and feel. And even though the language might be what we all sort of were dealing with, like I said, within the first 6 months of, playing.
Yeah.
Like the heart and the spirit behind it. And, on this song, the bridge goes to the floor tom, and it's sort of like a brown sugar thing. And I remember Bruce, when it was done, he'd sat like this, and his finger just went back and forth, almost like one of those metronome things, like in time, and then I think this thing went down really quickly. And then he said, man, I like this. It's just, you've done one of the harder things. You've made it feel like you were in the room when this happened,
exactly.
And anyway, I mean, I'm not saying that it's
not
that's hard, but it was just interesting, that perspective of, and that's interesting in this world we're in, where people send you tracks, and then I think that if you have good ears and instincts, and your musician skills are together, there is a way to hear what's happening and give the illusion anyway that everybody was in the room at the same time, or that, and I think that's an interesting skill. Like these skills we're talking about, about parts and sounds and flexibility, and it's so interesting how it's such another planet beyond, playing in 13/8 at 700 beats per minute or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just interesting when I started working at a young age in Missouri with VFW halls and weddings and country music and rock, all just a wide range of stuff. And it's just interesting how the functional nature of drums in this way, and being in the studio, it's just there is an art to that line of it, beyond the drumistic side of things sometimes.
Amen. And if you had not told me, or told all of us watching, that you put the drums down last, I'd have never in a million years thought I would have thought you were in the room with the band at the same time. Yeah. I mean, it's just you and I have to think, when you're hired to do these gigs, that's kind of almost like expected of you, right? I mean, you're not going to, you come in there with them expecting you to be able to do that. Right?
Yeah, it's interesting, this era we're in, and this whole thing about being able to play on a grid, and the click track era that we're in, and all this. And I don't even know how to argue if it's a good era, and that if we'll look back on this and go, oh, it was so much better when this wasn't happening. And that's all I know, is that as a drummer in this age, I have to know how to survive in that context, and this, it did, this idea of falling in love with playing simply too. Like I love when Steve Jordan says, simple doesn't necessarily mean stupid, and all that. And so it's interesting what you're talking about. I think anybody that's going to survive in the studio has to have that skill, being able to make a track-based thing feel good, and not chained by it,
Yeah, I mean, that to me, you did that. I mean, it sounds effortless, the way you are just It's like you're locked in with the bass player who was probably having a slice of pizza, somewhere else.
Yeah.
Man. Well, we'll keep moving on here. That's a great tune. All right, we're gonna get now into some stuff from a local boy.
Oh, one other story I just want to say about that Bruce thing real
Shawn,
quick.
go ahead.
So
Yeah.
the second song that we did that day was this ballad called Happy. And it's this really slow thing. And the demo had just cross stick on 2 and 4. And I remember at the time, like, they'd sent me the demo with this. And I'm like, man, I would love to come up with this sort of feathered, organic motion thing. And Remo used to make those snare drums with the conga heads on top.
Oh yeah.
So I had one of those. I sort of had a tea towel thing muted, and it was tuned down. And then I don't know, I'm always messing around with these like variations of rods and plastics, and so I had this kind of feathered thing going, and I was thinking Al Green mixed with Levon, mixed with Keltner and all, and man, I just loved this part, and then he kept hearing just this cross stick thing on 2 and 4 with all this space around it, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe here's this track, and I have this chance to record with Bruce, and I think this part is so great. And we were checking sounds, and I kept doing it, and they go, man, what about that cross? He'd say, what about that cross stick thing? I say, oh yeah. And I'd slip over and try to do the thing that I was in love with, and that gets back to what we were talking about, when we started, about this idea of, finally I just realized, okay, I got to let go of this. Bruce really wants this cross stick thing, and then I thought, oh my god, this is like the most.
He's the boss.
Yeah, right. Like, oh no, this is sort of the most pedestrian approach, part wise. But then listening back 6 months later, and it left all this space for his lyric and the singing, and you're zoned right in on that, and you're not hearing some hip, Al Green, which I love that whole thing, but that's kind of where I was thinking, and that was a big lesson, like listening back to it and trying not to hear it from the drum standpoint, but from the big picture standpoint. And the cross stick, it was something about the passing of time and seconds ticking. I don't know. It was just interesting, and that sound sort of had a connection to the lyric. And anyway, it was a big lesson, lesson that day.
That's great, man. That, again, so huge, because you're right. I mean, you have to be able to separate that kind of, and I'm sure your instincts are, I know they're excellent, Shawn. So it's not like you were only thinking of, oh man, I'm going to play some cool ass shit right here and just blow everybody's mind. You were thinking like, I think this would work really cool for this track. Like it'd be, but it's really cool that upon reflection, you went, okay, I get it, man. He wanted this space here, and the cross stick is really the best kind of vehicle to get his lyrics in there and make it his tune. Yeah. But that's really, and it's really cool that you saw that, you weren't like listening to it 6 months later going, shit, man, it would have been so much better if he let me play what I wanted to play. That's that's beautiful. I love it. And Bruce is probably watching this right now, and he appreciates you telling that story. All right. Well, man, I started to set up a couple of tunes from Peter Wolf that are just really great tunes.
No, he's a blast, man. I love him, and I'm proud of those records I got to do with him, because they're sort of very organic and cut on the floor, and man, I'm really proud of a lot of those. So what I love about that is it's just sort of a party in the box right out of the gate, Yeah. And I'm using 2 different snares. It's kind of subtle, but it's like a piccolo snare to the left, and then a slightly bigger snare when it goes to the chorus, and kind of that same fill language that we were just talking about, where it's that, and that, and it's just the part is like, just 1 and 3 on the bass drum, 2 and 4 on the snare, but like kind of a clangy sound. I think the cymbals were like some trippy bent cymbals that might, a little bit falling down the stairs type feeling, and that whole reggae offbeat thing with the guitars, and that sort of led me into the idea of the high pitched cracky snare thing. It's a Brady. I had this Brady 12x7, which it's just one of these drums that it's just magic. Some drums just seem to have a thing on the microphone, and this is one of them that if the house was on fire, I'd probably try to grab that. And but also, man, the Steve Jordan influence of the smaller snare when he was doing that for a while, and I always thought that was damn cool,
Yeah. Well, you made that your own though, Shawn. In fact, Doug McKenzie asked if that's a piccolo snare, and
Yeah.
I wondered that too. So were two different snares set up, and you were hitting the piccolo for those
For the
high
verses,
pitches.
and then it goes to the chorus, and I think that was like a 5-inch Black Beauty super sensitive drum from the 70s. And but it's a lot of fun, that track. I love all those records.
Yeah. And again, it's that the simplicity of what, like like you say, the 1 and the 3 and the bass drum, it just it just rolls along. It just has such a great flow and great vibe. Yeah.
With the bass drum, it's so interesting. Like, man, sometimes just that simple thing, like even when that Peg track, I remember when you guys did a deep dive into that. I'm such a Rick fan, and like I think that part is just 1 on the bass drum and then the end of 3 or end of 2. I can't remember, but the bass line's quite busy. But then the drums are very simple in the space for everything else to happen. Anyway, it's just
no, it's again, genius. And I'm gonna keep moving along here and play another tune by Peter Wolf, Too Close Together. And I'll let you set this up, but what's really cool is Keith Richards is on this song.
Yeah, this is a thrill. And at the beginning, we're doing the count off, and they both yell my name out, which I felt like I could die after that.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Yeah, it's so friggin' great. It's so great. And I'm gonna play it. In fact, I'm gonna play it through Keith takes a guitar solo in it, and I'd be breaking all the rules if I didn't let everybody hear Keith take a solo. So let's listen to Too Close Together, Peter Wolf with Keith Richards, and of course Shawn Pelton.
All right, this is a story about being double parked on the highway of love. Let me hear you, Shawn.
Let me hear, Shawn.
Take me back, year 1994. I had 2 fine chicks living door to door, and I was too close together. Too close together. I was too close together. That was the best that I could do. Well, I got early one morning, make my midnight creep. By the time I knocked on one girl's door, the other was looking at me. It's too close together. Man, too close together. Yeah, too close together. That's the best that I could do. Oh, come on, ain't it? Oh, stretch your legs, baby. Keith, come on. Yabba yabba, baby. Well, I slipped in the back door to get me a little time.
No mistaking Keith.
Oh man, yeah.
Sorry about that.
That was an incredibly fun night. And what I remember so distinctly is being around Keith and his energy and his love for music. Like, still at this point in his life, it's, sometimes, this business is such a trip and it can be easy to get jaded or, but man, he is still so innocently childlike in love with music and music making and all that. And it was like really made an imprint on me, like, wow,
Yeah.
he's so in love with this, and what I remember that's trippy about that is the setup. Like, I think it was just kick, snare, hi-hat, and then I set up a washboard on the right, and it's like under the piano solo, I noticed it is like, like a scrape on 3. And I'm always trying to see if there's an angle to bring, something kind of creative or a little bit left field, which is all the thing. And, Jay Belrose is a master of that, obviously, and Matt Chamberlain and all these cats. And it's always intrigued me, this idea of mixing in percussion with the kid or somehow trying to do something a little left field. I remember talking to Jerry Murata, who I'm a big fan of, Rich brother, because he always can be super creative, you know, in this context. And we were talking about it, and you know, he said, but the issue that's interesting about this is that you can't really force it into a situation that maybe it's, you know, you can maybe try and then realize, okay, wait, this, you know, but like a straight ahead pop session, let's say, you may not have the range to do something. And sometimes you do, you know, a lot of times you don't.
Yeah.
But I love that washboard thing, and it's all, you know, just organic in one take when that happened behind the piano, and you know, and the fills just you know,
Yeah.
you know, just
Yeah.
this the dance of it, you know, the dance of it, like
When I listened to it for the first time, it sounded like in my mind like a live take, probably a first take.
yeah, it went down fast, yeah.
Yeah, or a second, but yeah, like it really just really organic, really just happened. You got the feel, everybody got the vibe immediately, and it just you got the lightning in the bottle, you know.
Yeah, and I think I'm trying to think. I was listening because I think the stick might be one of those weird sticks, you know, it had little shakers in it and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I was doing that maybe, and then, you know, anything to like bring hair and dirt to it, you know.
It's great, man. Yeah. And speaking of Jerry, I'll just say that, you know, don't tell Rick Marotta I told him this, but Jerry's my favorite Marotta brother. He's, you know, between the two of them.
That's funny. Yeah, man, they're both so great, and
They are. Yeah.
But Jerry is so interesting sometimes with the, you know, I remember seeing him in town use one of those Douse drum kits with the Indian heads, you know, and
Yeah.
and it was just like, wow, this is so interesting, man. And he had one of these garden tools that would till dirt, and you put on a stick, but he had it, and it would like, it rang. It was sort of a shaker, but it had like a because it was metal, and it would twist, and he would he would do all this shit, you know. I was like, man, this cat is wild.
He really is. I remember seeing him play those Taos drums in the 90s up at like Montreal Drum Fest or some festival or something. And yeah, I mean, it was incredible. Like he just, his, you know, the creativity that, you know, both him and Rick are just monsters. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so are you. All right. Well, we got a couple more tracks and some fun videos to watch too. This is another really, really great tune. And again, legendary pop band, I should say, Hall Oates. And I think this is from the late 90s. This is Want To from the Marigold Sky record.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I made a note, maybe 97. And I'd never heard this song before, and it's a really great, great tune. So here we go. And of course, before I started, of course, your history with Daryl, I mean, on Daryl's house.
Yeah, that was, man, it was really thrilling to be a part of that, you know, for the first 3 years or so. And there's some really great performances on that. And then Brian Dunn does it now, who I love. Great drummer. And man, the catalog of live performances in his house, you know, that's really been
amazing. Yeah. I know. It was a treat it's still a treat, but it was a treat to see you doing those shows, and you know, like we only get a little snippet on SNL every week, so that was really cool to see you there.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. So here we go. This is Want To, Hall Oates.
know you
such a heavy track. It's so great.
Yeah, I love. It sounds good. You know, that's when I love the mix of it too. The way the drums are sort of in your face, and
Yeah.
all the rhythm guitar stuff with it. Yeah, I like that one, man.
You don't think of Hall Oates as being like, I don't know. Just again, it's just so heavy. It's just yeah, in your face. I love it. I mean, and they can certainly rock out, those guys.
Oh,
needless to say, but you know, they've written so many great like sort of pop tunes.
Right.
But that's a rocker, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, just to display your versatility, we're going to go to this song we talked about a few minutes ago. Sean Colvin, Sonny Came Home. I was privileged to see you perform this on the Grammys. I remember in 1998.
It may have been Radio City, but
Radio City. You're right. Yeah, Radio City. That's right. And this, you know, this is such a great. I guess for me, Sean, to describe it as you constructed like just the perfect drum part for this song.
Oh man, thank you. Yeah,
it's so great. Yeah, and this, like you said, this won Song of the Year, Record of the Year.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Here it comes. Sonny Came Home. Had to get that part in there, Sean. Man, the dynamics.
Yeah, that's interesting about the bridge. You know, this is John Leventhal produced this, and great, you know, musician, producer. And on that bridge there, I know there was a whole thing about, hey, we want to do a scene change. We're gonna construct a completely different sort of sonic stance for the bridge, you know. And so the part sort of goes to a floor tom, and then John loves, you know, Ringo and the history of the Beatles and the whole thing. And I remember we put it like a tea towel thing over the floor tom, and then the bass drum is sort of, you know, the reggae thing, or the drop 2 and 4, you know. And so that whole bridge was kind of constructed, you know, as an overdub to dial in a sound that would be a complete scene change, you know. And we did that at Sears Sound, which is still around, and it's on 48th Street between 8th and 9th. A great studio. and I think it has the board that John Lennon used for the double fantasy sessions.
Oh man.
And it's a Black Beauty snare. I think a super sensitive Black Beauty deeper snare, and DW kit, and that was a great record. Michael Rhodes played bass on all that. And,
Yeah. Yep.
So, but there's a lot of cool tracks on that record. There's a song called Trouble where it's like dun, 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 dun. It has this feathered like brush thing on a high tom or something, but the whole impetus of the track was Buddy Holly's Peggy Sue. It was like Peggy Sue, dun, 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 and it has this rolling tom thing, you know. And so it's interesting that thing about, you know, ideas that are influences that are on people's radar, the songwriter or the producer or something like that, and then sort of filtering it through, you know, a different lens, but knowing what the influence was and all that. Yeah. But that bridge thing is interesting, how I remember it being a complete reconstruct. And then the fills, you know, I know he loved Ringo, and so all that kind of falling down the stairs stuff. I remember reading an interview with Keltner saying that, you know, that there were so many years of people say, hey man, do the Ringo fills, you know, which
yeah,
it's great stuff, you know, but that sort of falling down the stairs, you know, really all that language that Ringo, you know, made so popular.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying too when you say that. Yeah, that's great. And you know, when I hear that track, and it may just be the way I'm perceiving it, but it sounds like you're just like laying a little bit, almost just a millisecond behind the beat a little bit. It's like it's just got such a lazy feel to it, you know. But
yeah, and it's interesting. I'm doing something with my left hand that I find myself doing a lot, and it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But sort of, it's like it's sort of like the Purdy ghost note thing. I mean, I love Purdy, you know. But you know, when he plays, you know, and it have like almost like a 16th note chatter with his ghost notes, you know. And then this is sort of, it's got a shuffle feel and having that. And then I think that John was always a fan too of like he had us layer a brush thing over it, doing the sort of halftime shuffle on top of the drums and getting all that delayed there. But that's interesting about the, you know, leaning forward or in the middle or in the back. I don't find myself thinking so much about that as just like, man, let me just play deep in the pocket as I can and have it feel good. But I guess I don't get into this idea of trying to necessarily understand if I'm behind or in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, no, and sometimes, you know, it's funny. I or other people maybe even, you think you hear it a certain way, and then you really analyze it, and it's maybe just, it's almost like you're being tricked into thinking it's a little bit this way or that way too. But it just, I think it's just the feel is so amazing. It just feels so relaxed and so, you know, just it's beautiful. Well, let's play a couple of really cool videos. This is really great that we can see you play now in a couple of great tunes, and this is a clip that we have. And I will bring it up right now. This is Give Me One Reason, Tracy Chapman, Eric Clapton, and you from, was this from the Grammys or Love Rocks?
This is one of these events at the White House, and I think it was for special education or something like that. But it's just at the White House somewhere.
All right, just at the White House.
Yeah.
All right, here it comes. All right.
Give me one reason to stay here. Turn right back around. Give me one reason to stay here. Oh, I'll turn right back around. Said I don't wanna leave you lonely. You gotta make me change my mind. Baby, I got your number. wonderful man. Oh, and rock me through the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, what a blast to get to play with them and, you know, Clapton and Tracy. And that's Leon Pendarvis on the organ, who's from the SNL band.
Yeah, yep.
There since the early 80s, an amazing musician, and he was sort of running that. And then that's La Bamba back there on trombone, some of the guys from the Conan band back then. And you know, it's interesting in these situations where you're in a house band or people come and, you know, you kind of have like 10 to 20 seconds to make a strong impression that it feels cool and you're together, and, you know, the tempo and like, you know, they sort of started off, I think, without a count off and paying attention to that. And man, all this sort of homework of sort of like, well, how does Tracy, how she used to doing this live with her own band, you know? And that's one of the great things about YouTube is that, you know, this gig that I get to do with Steve Gadd, you know, which is a house band situation, and all these artists come in, is like how much material is out there that you can go and sort of, because sometimes getting sent the record, you know, is just one lens, and then but live they might do it significantly faster or slower, or just at the same tempo, or, you know. And so it's interesting, these kind of events, you know, to be able to knock it out of the park. There is some pre-roll to it, you know. It's Anyway.
No, really good point. Really, really good point. I'm going to read a quick comment. There's been so many great comments, and I apologize to everybody watching at home. I wanted to just keep it moving, and I wanted to make sure Shawn got to, you know, give us the backstory and all these tunes. So, but I do want to read this comment from Douglas McKenzie. One of the most unique things about Shawn's drumming that I really enjoy is his body movement. It's instantaneously recognizable. It gives his drumming so much feel. And I agree 100%. Yeah,
well, you know, it's interesting. I've always been a fan of that connection of like drums and dancing. And I remember Lenny Pickett making this comment, you know, the tenor player from Tower Power, and played with everybody, and, you know, Airborne and all that. But he mentioned, well, we used to go down to just see drummers that would make you want to dance, or the drummers that we loved, you know, had that aspect to them, you know. And that I thought it was so interesting, man, about, you know, great field players. Like when you walk in and hear a band, you know, the band can be terrible, but if the drummer's happening or has a nice feel, it can sort of transcend a lot of things that are happening around him, you know. And like, what is going on, you know, magic wise, when you hear Bernard Purdie play from a feel standpoint that just makes you want to move your ass? What is all that about, you know? And like, for me, when I hear these things back, I hear that it's a lot of the same language, but really played. I'm trying to play it as deep in the pocket with much heart and spirit. And the language might be simple, but I'm really trying to this feeling of that, you know, there's a groove and movement and all of that. You know, I'm not trying to rewrite the language of the Motown, like all these drum fills that are very Motown orientated. I'm not really trying to reinvent the wheel with groups of 5 or 7, or, you know, which I really respect all of that language. I do. I just find for working and surviving and paying the rent, you know, this other aspect of drilling into. I remember Frampton in an interview when I'd done something with him, and he was just talking about, you know, really all I really need from drums sometimes is just the duh, you know, or, you know, and it's just like, you know, being simple to follow and straight ahead, but then the magic behind, like we're saying, like, you know, why is Steve Ferroni so magic? Why, you know, Keltner and all these guys from a feel standpoint, and what is it about Bernard that makes you want to shake your ass, man, when you hear him play? What's going on? And that's always just fascinated the shit out of me, and made me, you know, I feel really all in on that aspect of the groove playing, you know, for song.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. That was fun, you know, to see. You know, it's interesting watching that, like, because it was an outdoor, like in the shed tour type thing, or, you know, bigger spaces, and like, it's fascinating, this, especially living in New York and surviving, like, the clubs in New York, you know, it's like small spaces, like the 55 bar, you know, which is unfortunately gone now, and then Bitter End. And but that kind of, you know, and obviously the Kenny influence of getting a big sound, you know. And then I also love Tony Williams, you know, with the later era. I loved all of Tony Williams, but, you know, when he the thing with the drums and the black top. You know, when he was playing almost like a rock drummer with the big sound.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's very single stroke orientated and sort of holding back, very wrist or, you know, orientated, and
so much power. Yeah.
A lot of just big, you know, and so it's interesting that physical language, but you can't really get away with that in a small club in New York, you know, and that flexibility, back to that word, and adaptability and sort of range of, you know, if you went to audition for, like, you know, a stadium tour, and if they want that kind of physical presence behind the drums, you know, having that language together, as well as being able to show up, you know, at the Vanguard and play a jazz set, you know, in where you really probably can't beat the shit out of break everything, you know. So it's just interesting that thing about surviving as a freelancer and the physical range of drumming, you know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Man, a lot of fun. That you know, that kind of take no prisoners, just let's just blow the place up the idea. I love that, you know, that drumming thing.
Yeah.
Keith Moon and all that kind of stuff. I just love it. But this track was interesting because Steve Jordan's on this record, and then I think the track had evolved where the chorus got much more heavier with the electric guitars, and you know, I happened to be around. We were doing some tracking, and I think Steve was probably out of town, and you know, I ended up playing on the choruses, but which is just, it's just interesting about how tracks can evolve, you know, and so his stuff is sort of has a tighter funk and super funky approach and drum sound, and then it sort of opens up on the original recording where it's just a different scene change with the drum sound, and the approach is more rocking, and then it goes back to him and all that. So it's interesting in the studio how sometimes those things happen. I know I've been involved in tracks where they say, oh, this is going to be very kind of acoustic and unplugged feeling. And then, you know, 3 months later, they've layered everything on it. And it's like,
yeah,
on the front porch, you know, isn't working.
Yeah. And, you know, and I was just going to say, when you listen to the studio version of that, you're right. You definitely can hear the difference in the two. Like you say, it goes to another gear during the chorus where it's heavier. And I mean, Steve is Steve.
Oh yeah,
and
it's not a reflection on his anything. It's more about, I think, whether he was in town or not, and just then how the track evolved from the initial stage. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's great. That's great. And just a couple more videos. I won't say I saved the best for last, but these are really cool because these last two videos I'm going to show are great. Are both a great showcase of how much technique you have. I mean, I think we've already seen that and heard that today anyway, but you know, you're so diverse, Shawn, and that you played on these great songs that, you know, your job on some of these songs was just to play what was supposed to be played, support the song, and then I'm excited to play some videos where you really get to stretch, and like you say, you know, and that's tune as well. You got to stretch and we got to hear that. So I do want to read a quick comment from our friend John Adams, who does the great podcast Drummers Eating Pizza, which I know you were on, Shawn, and he came to my house not too long ago, and I was on his podcast, and he said, Shawn gave me a DVD from the summer he toured with Sheryl Crow, and his pocket with that band was so good. I make all my students watch it. So,
all right.
Yeah, right on, John. Yeah. That's great. All right. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. We got a couple more videos, and then we're going to bring Robin Flans out for a really exciting announcement. This is House of Diablo, your band from the Modern Drummer Festival in 2010. And I remember being there in the room watching you guys, and I was floored, and I was excited to find this video. We'll play a little bit of your performance that day. Man. Oh,
Oh man, hilarious. Well, that group of musicians, we used to play around New York a lot, and Clark Gayton. I love hearing back. Clark da 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 da, and it's like, no, motherfucker, da 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 da. And it's almost like. I've always enjoyed that about improvised music. Sometimes when you can tell that there's a dialogue, and people listening to each other and trying to nail the story down. And
yeah.
That setup is a trip. I remember having that beer keg with a big ass Zydeco washboard thing on it, and I was using it like as a guiro,
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw that there's a shaker around my left foot. I was trying to develop this thing where, and I know Jay Bellows does this, but having this thing around my left foot that I could shake that would somehow play eighth notes underneath, or like underneath, like land as a spread under a backbeat. I was just starting to try to figure that out. And the solo is interesting. I often wish I had more time or spend more time, but when you're working a lot, it's just wild. You don't often get in a chance that where you're playing solos and stuff. But what I hear that I love how it starts and there's a lot of space, and then I'm trying to motivically set up some type of thing like blah blah blah, then blah blah blah, blah blah blah. But I'm like trying to say something melodically and make a musical statement, as opposed to just the one-handed snare drum roll or something, or like I'm trying to somehow say, and then I can hear the the Tony influence and the single stroke roll things we were talking about, and that big ass sound, and but what I hear from that is I've always loved drummers when they tell a story, in a solo context, and that they're thinking melodically or motivically or something. And like, I used to transcribe timbali, Tito Puente timbali solos, because with the two pitches, and he would sort of tell a story and there would be call and response. And, I hear that influence on that with the snares off and that Latin kind of thing. And, but that's, when I see Joe Jones play a solo and you can just tell he's melodically setting something to tell a story, or, Joe Morello's Take 5 solo, like the composition element of it, it's just insane, like the space and the call and response and all that. So, that it's funny, man, that the language that drummers have these days is just so, it's so impressive, and I just don't have a lot of that. And so I try to compensate with melody and things and attitude, or whatever.
I think you got so much. You got so much to offer, Shawn. You do.
Yeah, no.
Right. Come on. I know you're a humble guy, but I'll just say, I think that's a great example of just, but aside from the creativity and the ideas, you got like serious chops, and it was great to see you like really get to stretch in that moment there. I remember being in the room at the time and just like going, yeah, and then I know we hung out later at the dinner that night, and you were like, I'm like, man, I'd never heard you play like that. And you're like, oh, thanks, man. I'm like, I'm telling you sounded unbelievable.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Well, this last one, man, this is cool. I know we still got folks watching. I appreciate you guys hanging. Check this out. This is a fun video of Steve Gadd with Pedrito Martinez playing percussion. And this is really cool. And if you don't recognize the tune, it's Ants Marching by Dave Matthews. And this is from Love Rocks.
Yeah.
Right. And Dave was a guest there. So you're doing a Dave Matthews tune, and it's a great solo section with you and Steve and Pedrito. So here it comes. Oh man. Oh man. Such a
Well,
great tune, and you guys just killed it.
it was fun, man. It was so fun, and you know, I got to tell you that. I mean, it's really fun, but I've had to work on like mentally keeping it together on those kind of situations. Like wow, you know, okay, oh my God, I got to trade with Steve Gadd, and you know, and I remember when I was in school, there was a lead trumpet. The guy that taught lead trumpet at Indiana University School of Music, and he made people read this book, Psycho-Cybernetics, and you know, because playing lead trumpet, there's a lot of pressure and you're exposed, and so he was trying to build like this mental positive space for the students, you know. And then I remember saying, "Oh, you got to read this book," but it. I mean, when I knew that we were going to be trading, it was like, oh my God, you know, I was really like, wow, you know, I'm going to have to do this. So,
I know. Yeah.
you know, but it was a lot of fun, so much fun. And, you know, it's been such a gift. There's been like 9 years of these, and Steve's made 7 of them, where working next to him and playing with all these artists. And, you know, just when he went at the last one, he's, you know, or just this like, you know, and like his physical commitment and stuff. Like, I'll be next to him, we'd be playing like, you know, like an Elton John ballad, like type of thing, like don't let the and then, you know, all of a sudden, and just like his heart and like all the things we've been talking about, and like how deep the pocket is, and his commitment to it, and the sound, and like the soulfulness and the depth of it, like, you know, like beyond all the amazing things that we know Steve has together, that side of him, his heart thing, it just, I've like been next to him doing something like that, and he likes when we do fills together sometimes, you know, and man, I'll tear up a little bit. I'm just like,
I hear you, man. Yeah,
so soulful, and so it's been such a gift to get to do that with him.
Oh, that's so great, Shawn, man. I'll just say I know Steve well enough to say that, you know, he's. I know what you're saying, because he's so about the music. Like, he's never going to play anything that he thinks is not going to complement what you're doing, what's going to make the whole band sound great. So it's almost like you have that luxury of relaxing and knowing that, like, and he has that same luxury with you there. And I know we've talked about this, him and I, about playing with other drummers, and how sometimes it can be, and Rick Marotta has said the same thing. Sometimes it can be great. Sometimes if it's not the right vibe and the right guy or gal, it's like, you know, it can be really hard work and stressful, right? I mean, and you can see that he's not worried about, like, is Shawn gonna you know, whatever someone else might do, and you can see there's that relaxation and that trust there, you know.
Yeah, no, he's been amazing. Like you said, such a team player, and the way his big picture awareness, and his ears, and how he hears and listens, and but it's so rare for drummers to be around other drummers sometimes in that kind of context. And I've just learned so much. He's one of those guys you learn so much just being in his airspace, you know.
Yeah. I know. We love Steve. Well, all right. Well, going to bring out my longtime dear friend, Robin Flans. And let's get Robin out here right now. Where is she? There she is. There's Robin Flans. We're going to bring Robin Flans, who is, this is great. Robin is the director of collaboration and outreach at Future Youth Records, and she has an exciting announcement that just happens to kind of coincide with what we've been talking about all day today. So, Robin, I'll hand it over to you. Welcome, by the way.
I've been listening to the show, and wow, this makes it so much easier to tell people what's going on, because I'm so impressed with what I've been hearing about Shawn, and hearing everything and all the music. But not only is Shawn like this amazing player, but he's also an incredibly generous soul.
Yes.
Because he's agreed to help the organization that I work with, Future Youth Records, to fund our artists who are people who care about the world. And basically, he is donating his time for a 90-minute lesson. And all of his sponsors have donated items that are so amazing that we have a package that we've put together that's worth over $1,000 in amazing merchandise that Shawn uses himself. And anyway, what Future Youth Records does, and it's just an easy couple of sentences, is we are a nonprofit record label that produces young artists for free, and they retain all the rights to their music. They produce music with social awareness. So it's not political, but they are young artists who care about the world. They believe that music can heal the world, and so do we. We believe that music can right the things that are wrong, and these young people do too. And Shawn has been generous enough to care along with us. Right, Shawn?
Yes, absolutely. Very excited.
And Robin, if I may, I'll play the video that you've created, that Shawn's created for the auction.
Please.
And
Yes.
just to sort of fill in some of the blanks, I will include a link to the auction with this episode, and Robin and I will share it on all our social media, get the word out there. And I'm going to quickly read, but let me just play this message from Shawn, because it's a great message. Here it comes.
Hey, my name is Shawn Pelton. I'm up here at Saturday Night Live, and I'm excited to share that we're offering a one-on-one drum lesson to benefit Future Youth Records. Whether you're a beginner or a more experienced player, I'm looking forward to sharing what I've learned through my years in the studio and on the road. And thanks to the generosity of my sponsors, the auction winner will also receive a gear package from DW, a cymbal from Zildjian, some sticks from Vader, and a 1-year subscription to the Drum Channel. Future Youth Records is doing incredible work empowering young people to create music that matters. They provide recording opportunities, mentorship, and a platform for youth to develop their voices and share stories through music that can truly make a difference in our world. 100% of the proceeds from this auction will go directly to supporting their programs. Your bid helps provide studio time, equipment, and mentorship for young musicians who might not otherwise have these opportunities. Throughout my career, I've seen firsthand how music can transform lives. It certainly transformed mine. By supporting Future Youth Records, we're helping to create the next generation of musicians, producers, and change makers. So place your bid, win a drum lesson with me, and together, let's help young people. Thanks for your support, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
All right. And Robin, if you'll permit me, I will read basically the package, what everybody can win.
Yeah.
Some great prizes. So in addition to the lesson with Shawn, 90-minute drum lesson, private drum lesson with Shawn Pelton, 1-year membership to Drum Channel, $200 value, Vader gear bundle, Vader drumsticks used by Shawn, $195, DW professional gear bundle of $365 value, Black Beauty cowbell, DW claw hook clamp and convertible arm, DW series hi-hat jingle ring double, and a DW 5000 accelerator single pedal. From my friends at Zildjian, a Zildjian K cluster crash cymbal 16 inches, value $340. From our friends at Hudson, Rob Wallace and the folks at Hudson Music digital book bundle. And from Live from My Drum Room, I'm happy to be part of this. I'm donating a hoodie and a t-shirt and one of Rod Morgenstein's Wing Thing drum tools, which is really, really cool. I had Rod on my podcast a while back, you might remember, and he has this great drum tool called the Wing Thing. In fact, Shawn, I'm going to send you one of these.
Yeah.
I have a bunch. You'll dig it.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So it's incredible what you've put together here, Robin, and
Well, with the
hats
help
off.
of all of you, and to, you know, Sean's really big heart, and my and the allowance of my pestering him to death, and just the sweetest human. You know, before this, I really didn't know Sean, and um, uh, I just I'm so happy that we've become friends, um, and you can see by this podcast that sitting with Sean for 90 minutes will be invaluable. I mean,
Exactly.
this package is really super priceless. You will learn so much. So the thing is, obviously, if you don't live in New York City, this is going to be difficult, but you will want to travel there with your friends and family, all to your own expense. But nonetheless, my son, Jamie Eblin, another drummer, is donating his the studio that he rents space, and he will be there facilitating that. And
Great.
and all you have to do to bid is go to our landing page, which is futureyouthrecords.org, and put in your bid. And this, like I said, it's priceless. Spending time with Sean after what you've heard today needs to be a no-brainer. I mean, I'd like to pay for 90 minutes with Sean.
Yeah, me
So,
too. I was thinking the same thing.
yeah. And what a goodie bag. So, guys, start your bids.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and we'll put all the information in the show notes. We'll get all the information out there to everybody. And Sean, thank you. You know, Robin's already said this, but I want to just say thank you for doing this, and just always, you've always been that way, just giving back, and thank you.
No, I'm really excited to be part of it. And Robin, thanks for putting all this together. And it'll be a lot of fun. So
Couldn't do it without you, Sean.
no, this is great. And John, thanks for having me on, man. I love what you're doing with the podcast. Man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much, both of you. And Robin, thanks for your patience. We really got into some great stuff today. So
I loved hearing it.
yeah, it was really, really fun. And I want to thank everybody at home for watching. Hang with me if you would, Sean and Robin, just for 1 second. We'll end the stream. But thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again real soon. Big hand for Shawn Pelton and Robin Flans. And thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon. All right, that's my show. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, leave me a comment, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also download the podcast on all podcast platforms. And I'm excited to tell you that Live from My Drum Room has been ranked #1 best drum podcast for the second straight year. So thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. And I want to invite you to check out livefrommydrumroom.com, my website, for upcoming shows, and also for information on ordering Live from My Drum Room merchandise, t-shirts and hoodies. 100% of the proceeds go toward a scholarship I've created with the Percussive Arts Society. There's also information on ordering merchandise in the show notes. And you can email or text me at livefrommydrumroom@gmail.com. So remember, no drummers are harmed on any show. And drummers, when in doubt, leave it out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you again real soon.